An array is a data structure. An indexed array is the simplest of the array data structures. An array stores a collection of values, any number of values. The only thing that limits the amount of data that the array can store is the memory in the computer. And the indexed arrays use a number to identify the position in the array where a value is stored. We get three types of arrays with PHP: the simple indexed array, associative arrays, which are often referred to as dictionary data structures, and multi-dimensional arrays. So an array can store an entire list of values, and we can access those values randomly. And when I say randomly, I mean that you can say, give me the value at position 6, and you don't have to go from position 1 through 5 to get to position 6. You go directly to position 6. This is called random access storage. And so in the example here, I have an array of sci-fi characters. Notice the keyword array. So that says assign to this sci-fi characters variable an array that's storing 4 strings. An array begins its indexing at 0. What that means is the maximum index of an array is 1 less than the number of elements that it's storing. This is, again, one of those junior programmer issues that often arises, where if you try to access an element that is outside of the bounds of the array, you'll get a fatal error. So how do we know what's in the array? How many elements? Well, we just ask the array. We have a function called count, and we pass it the name of the array variable, and it will return to us the number of elements in the array. Now, oftentimes when we're debugging, we want to see what's in the array. The print_r function will just simply dump everything that's in the array. Well, now associative arrays are like a dictionary. Think about Webster's. When you're looking up the definition of a word, you look up the word to find the definition. This is how an associative array works. Again, by another name, an associative array is known as a dictionary data structure. So in this case, I have an array called spaceships, and the key in the array is the series name, and the lookup value is the name of the spaceship associated with that television series. So if I wanted to find, for example, the Starship Enterprise, and I know that it's from the Star Trek series, I would ask the array, hey, give me the value that you're storing that's associated with the Star Trek television series. And then to list all of the elements in an array, an associative array or an indexed array, we can use the for each statement. Now we've seen this in the last demonstration. We listed all of the elements of the integer array using a for each statement. So the for each statement says, hey, take everything that's in this array individually and call it name. And then, in this example, just echo that name. So let's go look at some code. Okay, in this little snippet of code, I want to demonstrate again the indexed array. So we use the keyword array, and we assign that to a variable called counter array. In that array definition, we've put 10 integer values. So this is an integer array, an indexed integer array that's being stored in the variable counter array. And then we simply use the for each loop to print each value that's being stored in the array. So we say for each value in counter array, call that value num, and then echo it out using that name num. So num becomes a representation of each of the elements in the array as the for each loop iterates over those elements. Notice also that I've scaffolded the code here with the debug equals 1. So that lets my debug conditional statement execute. And in this case, I am just dumping the contents of the array using the print_r function. And then I create an associative array. Now the associative array takes two values for each entry in the array. One is the key value. It is the value that we're going to use to look up the other value. The second value is the value that we want to look up. So in this case, we are using the key Star Trek to look up the value enterprise. Notice the new operator that we're using. This operator is the equal sign greater than sign. What it tells PHP is to associate the value on the left with the value on the right. So now we can look it up like a dictionary. We look up the word, we find the definition. We look up the key, we find whatever value we're storing there. So in this associative array called spaceships, I can access any of the elements in the array just by using the key. So the next statement is looking for the spaceship associated with Star Trek. And then I can use a for each loop. And again, the for each loop for an associative array will work exactly like it does for an indexed array. It takes every element in the array and it says for each value, not the key, but for each value in the associative array, call it names. Inside of the for each loop, I just echo the name. The for each loop is managing going to each key, looking up the value associated with each key, assigning that value to the names variable, and then letting me do something with it. And again, in this case, all I'm doing is echoing. And then I have another debug command that's just dumping the contents of the associative array. So let's run this, and you'll see I get my counter values as expected from 0 to 9 in the for each loop on the indexed array. We've seen this before. Then the print_r statement gives us a nice printout of the array contents along with their index. The next line is the echo here of the associative array lookup for the key Star Trek. So Kirk was the captain of the Starship Enterprise. And then the for each statement for the elements within the spaceship associative array. We get the three elements looked up for us by the for each statement, assigned to the names variable, and then echoed. And then finally we get the dump statement, the print_r statement dump of the associative array. And notice that it's a nice, useful output. It gives us the key and the associated value with that key. The last thing I wanted to demonstrate is what I warned against earlier, is that in an indexed array, we cannot step outside of the bounds of the array. So our counter array has 10 integer values stored within it. So the index of the array is 0 to 9. And in this statement on line 22, I am accessing the counter array position 12, which does not exist. There is no position 12. So the memory space that is there wherever 12 would be does not belong to the counter array, so that when we try to access it, PHP is going to give us a pretty nasty error. So let me save this and then go back over here and reload our page, and you'll see the error is an undefined offset. Offset is just a fancy word for a memory location. And so here we see clearly that this array, counter array, does not own the memory space at position 12 in the memory. And so PHP just gives us a fatal error. Okay, so again, it's your turn. In this exercise, we'd like you to create a web page that's going to validate a username and password. So to do that, set two variables, username and password, to the values that are shown here. then use an associative array that stores usernames and passwords and test against that associative array. So you'll have to loop through each value in the associative array, test to see if the password that's given is correct. Now, obviously, add more values for the associative array. I've given you 3 examples here. Add more. One of those must be S. Connor with the password fate that we make in order for you to find the value. It must obviously be in the array. And so if you find the password value associated with the username, then just print a statement, echo a statement that says welcome. If you can't find the username, or if the username's password is incorrect, then print try again.